All right, welcome back to another Three Rings podcast. Last time we talked about the draft just in general. This time we're gonna get to dive into the Pistons, kind of more of what we would like to talk about. Vinayak, how are we doing?
We're doing pretty good. It's draft week, so the trade stuff, everything's riling up. Teams are finally getting like their final workouts in, finalizing their big boards, and it's almost go time. We're like today's Monday, Thursday's the draft, so an exciting time for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Um, let's just dive right into it. So Pistons, number one pick, Cade Cunningham, right? Seems pretty obvious, but from the reports that we're hearing, maybe not. But like, how much stock can we put into that? Like all of these reports of like trade possibilities and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, yeah, for sure. So yesterday, Jonathan Givnoy of ESPN comes out with the report saying the Pistons, Cade Cunningham is the favorite, and he thinks that the Pistons are pretty much finalizing on Cade Cunningham. But they also noted that Troy Weaver is a big fan of Evan Mobley, who hasn't worked out with the Pistons yet. Apparently, he's also turned down the Houston Rockets. So maybe that's a indication that he thinks he's going three to Cleveland. But Jalen Green has a strong desire to be the number one pick. So he actually scheduled a workout with the Pistons in California and also in Detroit. So I do wonder if they're going to give some thought to Jalen Green. According to Kevin O'Connor, he dominated his workouts. He showed off his athleticism. He interviewed well. So I'm kind of interested to see how Troy Weaver values that, because this is the same person who saw Russell Westbrook come 2 hours early to a workout and decided to take him in the 2008 draft. So he definitely values these workouts, and that could potentially be an indication they may go green. But so far, I think everything's lining up towards Cade. What do you think towards it?
Yeah, I mean, I think Cade should be the guy. Obviously, we should put more stock into workouts. I.e., Donovan Mitchell,
Mhm.
uh, taking. I mean, the dude didn't miss a shot in his workout for the Pistons, and he was like, "No way, they don't take me." And then they take Kennard. So I think we should put a little bit of stock into these workouts, but at the same time, Cade Cunningham is not Luke Kennard. He is a different breed. So I think if Jalen Green becomes a better player than Cade, so be it. But I think at this point in time, on Thursday night, you got to take Cade at number one. And I mean, I think the trade talks, obviously, you want to talk a little bit about some of the trades and stuff, but, or like the trade possibilities. But I think if they're getting a ton of offers and a lot of teams are looking to trade for Cade, I think that just shows you how good of a player he's going to be and why you should keep the pick.
Yeah, for sure. And like Cade in
Yeah.
general, just like he's already falling in love with Detroit, or I don't know if fall in love is the right word, but he's interacted with the fans. His brother is responding to DMs. He was at the Tigers game. The fans were chanting, "We want Cade." He had a media availability and he was shouting out Detroit and the city. I think he's kind of embraced it, and I think that's an important step moving forward. You want players that want to play for Detroit. So hopefully Cade
Yeah.
is the pick, and it's a simple selection on Thursday for sure.
Yeah. But like we talked about last time, like keeping an open hand about like, listening to every single possibility is important. But did you want to talk about a couple of the trade possibilities that caught your eye?
Yeah, for sure. For Cade.
Yeah, for no, or just for the number one pick.
Yeah, so I think with the number one pick, it requires a lot of value. Like I think this is a different scenario than the Markel Fultz situation in 2017. I have a hunch and a feeling that Boston may have known that Fultz was gonna have injury problems, or they may have like had some intel into that, and it's why they traded that number one pick. So I don't think Cade in this instance has injury. There's nothing that we know of, and I think his value and his ceiling is much higher than Markel Fultz. Although both the prospects were pretty complete coming into the draft. I do think Cade's like on another tier. So I definitely for Houston, it would start with number two. Obviously, number two would be involved. Then I think the Pistons will probably ask for their first round pick back, potentially one of their other first rounds, 23. And then even with that, I think the Pistons honestly should start demanding maybe unprotected first in the future. That's Houston's probably their most valuable asset. They're on their own unprotected first or another team's unprotected first. But even then, like, is it really worth it? You know, if the Rockets are willing to go to that length, like you said, like then that just goes to show Kate Cunningham's value. I think Houston though is like one of the few teams I think that can make an offer, but I'm not sure if the Pistons are even like interested.
Yeah, and I mean, Houston does have two other picks in the first round this year. I want to say it's pick 19 and 20, something like that. So you could definitely get a couple picks this year along with future first round picks to add on to pick number two. I think an interesting one for me was also Oklahoma City. People were saying that Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, pick six, and like a couple other things. I think Detroit gave, an extra second or something like that to even it out. But I think that was an interesting one where you look at how well SGA has played and like how well he broke out 2 years ago or like last season. But I mean that's pretty intriguing and probably the most intriguing in my opinion. Um, but what do you make of that trade proposal?
So I'm like a really big fan of SGA. I think honestly, if when you showed this to Thunder fans, they were like, hell no, absolutely not, because they value SGA so highly. And I definitely think he has the potential to be a top 10 player in this league. Like if you just look at his stats and his efficiency this past year, it was ridiculous. So if the Pistons were offered something like that, I think it would be kind of hard. I mean, it really depends on how you project Kate Cunningham. Do you see him as a Hall of Famer? I think if you see him reaching that Hall of Fame status, then I guess you won't make that trade. But if you see him just being like Chris Middleton, Jason Tatum, the type of comps that you'll hear thrown out, I definitely think it's definitely worth considering. SGA is a talent, and if I'm the Pistons, that probably moves the needle. This one thing that's funny about it is both teams, like both fans, rejected the trade. Like when this trade SGA in like six, I believe, was proposed, both fans like rejected that idea. But that just goes to show if both fans are unhappy, it's probably a good trade. But yeah, I don't know. That would be interesting. I don't know if OKC offers that though, because I think they may value SGA pretty highly, as they should.
Yeah. Oh, and going back quickly, Houston has picks 23 and 24, not 19, 20. Um, but yeah, so I mean, what to you would be like what to you would be an ideal trade like from any team? Like what would be a trade package that you can't say no to? Yeah, it can be super unrealistic even if Kate is worth that much.
Yeah, no, I think that would probably go. It would probably be with either Houston or Oklahoma City. I don't think Cleveland, although Cleveland's kind of intriguing. I don't know if Sexton really like intrigues me that much. Maybe Darius Garland, but I doubt they trade Garland. So from OKC, or no, right, let's start with Houston. From Houston, I'm expecting two. I would want one of 23 or 24. I think that's a pretty valuable. This is a pretty, I wouldn't say like deep draft, but there's a lot of high upside guys. There's a lot of like players who have high ceilings. So definitely a pick there. I think the Pistons should get their own pick back. But I think honestly, if I'm the Pistons, I'm asking for their unprotected picks. I think Houston's own unprotected picks. I'm not sure if they can trade it in 2022 because it is like there's a rule that you can't trade consecutive years. So maybe 23. I would ask for one of those. And I'm also asking for Brooklyn's pick that they've got from the trade. And I'm honestly asking for Brooklyn's one of their later years. I'm under the impression that with Brooklyn, the Kyrie, KD, James Harden core is probably going to be done. I assume probably 3, 4 years.
Really?
You want to get you want to get that Brooklyn pick once the team is maybe like they win their titles, they do whatever and they move on. My assumption is they would move on and then Brooklyn is just back to being not as good, like lottery level. I think a later Brooklyn pick would be pretty valuable to the Pistons, but that's like what 4, 5 first. I think that's honestly fair, and that's just a result of the leverage Pistons have. And the same goes for OKC, something in this realm of 5 picks. I honestly though, if I'm OKC, I think OKC should try to trade up to 3 or 2, and then offer to the Pistons for 1. I think the gap from 1 to 6 is way too large for me to accept something like 6, 8, 16. I believe they have 16 and 18 and 6. I don't think that gets the job. I think they have to move up. But yeah, no, what would you see if what would you say is a fair trade?
Honestly, I would say probably like for Houston, for example, I would say probably give me Kevin Porter Jr.
Mm-hmm.
and Christian Wood for along with pick number 2, and then probably 2 more unprotected picks next year, so 2022, and then probably like 2024, 2025,
Mm-hmm.
something like that. So I would say 3 or 4 first round picks along with 2 like ready NBA players now. And then OKC, honestly, yeah, just SGA, and then yeah, they got to give like they probably have to give like 4 or 5 picks because I do value Cade that highly.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but obviously OKC, Troy Weaver, coming from OKC, Sam Presti has never, you know, he's always thinking of trades, so he's never uh not listened to a trade deal. So I think anything is possible, but I just don't see it happening in the end. Um, I trust Troy Weaver. He's probably one of the only GMs of like any team that like I trust, or like the teams that I cheer for at least.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, but obviously enough about pick 1. The Pistons have more picks in this draft. They have 37, 42, and 52 all in the second round. But as we saw last year in Troy Weaver's first year, he does have a lot of it. He does make trades. So he traded up to get Isaiah Stewart in the first round. He also traded up to get Sadiq Bey. He kind of fleeced Houston last year with I think it was a Sadiq Bey trade where he had like he traded it for like a protected first that it's just super protected. That by the time they're good, uh like they'll finally get rid of it. Um but yeah, do you see the Pistons trading back up to into the first round this year too?
I definitely think that's a possibility. I actually kind of want it to happen, and I wouldn't be surprised if it does. I think Troy Weaver is the kind of person to approach the draft where he has his guys, he sees the guys that he knows going to draft who he wants, and he's gonna move up or give up whatever it takes to get them. So for Sadiq Bey, he gave up 4 first-round picks and Luke Kennard. And I think people at the time were like, that's quite a bit of value for the 19th pick. But I mean, as it's played out, you could probably make an argument that that's an okay trade because second-round picks, they come and go. They're pretty easy to get. As we saw, we like got all of her seconds back. And then Luke Kennard got a big contract on the Clippers, and Sadiq Bey on a rookie contract, basically providing what Kennard did for the Pistons. But I think honestly they would have to couple probably picks 37, 42 and a player. And I think maybe like if you look at it, a Josh Jackson, he's a potential candidate that could get traded. He was the reclamation project, the hometown hero that came to the Pistons. And he honestly started the season pretty well, but as the season kind of went on, there was moments in the game where it's like IQ and his lack of awareness really like showed like he plays hard, but there's sometimes, he turns the ball over too much. He's pretty inefficient as a shooter. So I think Josh Jackson could get traded. I'm not sure if teams would value that. And then another player I think would be Sekou Doumbouya. I think he's actually probably their most valuable trade asset in terms of moving up and could intrigue teams. And they could maybe use him to get in like the 20 range because while Sekou was a project player, the flashes have been pretty minimal. He had to be honest, he had a quite a disappointing second year season compared to expectations. The first year was, I'd say, pretty good. He dunked on Tristan Thompson, had some nice games against the Celtics and Nuggets. But in the second year, it was a lack of consistent playing time. Maybe he didn't spend enough time in the G League. That's why. But Sekou also wasn't a Troy Weaver player, right? Like Troy Weaver, Sekou's the only player that Troy Weaver, when he came to the roster, he kept. And something about his vibe to me just feels kind of off compared to the rest of the team. So I wouldn't be surprised if we traded into the first round using Sekou. Maybe pick up a player who's literally like Sekou, a project player. But yeah, no, for sure. What would you do if you were Troy with the second round?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of tough. And as weird as this sounds, I think there's a lot fewer players to trade on this roster than there were when Troy Weaver got there. And I mean, you look at this roster, and yeah, their record was bad, but like if you watch them, they were a lot more entertaining team to watch than before. But also, I think yeah, Josh Jackson's probably a trade piece. I think Sekou is a solid trade piece. I think they should have uh looked at contracts of guys like Frank Jackson, who's now a free agent, I believe. I think you could have got some value out of him just cause he had a pretty decent season when they got him. I also think Hamidou Diallo. A lot of people think like to keep him, but I also think he could be a solid trade piece if they wanted to trade um for a player like in the first round, especially like a fringe lottery, like anywhere between like 13 through like 16, 17. I think he would be a solid trade asset that people would accept the trade for. um do you want to talk about Jerami Grant? I guess there's rumors that he'd be traded to Golden State amongst others, but I mean, his trade value went up a lot. Obviously, he finished whatever second or third for most improved player. Um, but I also think yeah, people like his his value on the Pistons. But what do you make it? What do you make of that?
Yeah, no, with Jeremy Grant, like with almost every single trade proposal, I've like rejected anything Bleacher Report proposes. I usually just say no. But the most recent trade from Bleacher Report really got me thinking. And like, I think if Jeremy Grant was okay with the trade, I would consider doing it. I know, so Grant came here, he came here for a black GM and a black coach, and he came to Detroit to get his to get his own to be the number one option, which I completely respect, which is why I don't think like they should actively pursue trading Jeremy Grant at all. In fact, like I think he has all of the say in this, and they should just do it on his terms, whatever keeps him happy, because you definitely want to keep your reputation amongst free agents to be high. I don't want to trade someone who willingly came to your organization. But this trade with Bleacher Report would give us the number 7 pick, James Wiseman and Kelly Oubre Jr. And we would give up Jeremy Grant, Corey Joseph, and the number 37 pick. And from the looks of it, like if let's say the 7th pick ends up being Jonathan Kuminga, which looks like Book Night is going to, it looks like Kuminga is going to be the player that's going to be sliding on draft night. But if you end up with Kuminga and then you get James Wiseman, that's a pretty young core. Like if I list off, you have Kate Cunningham, Killian Hayes, Sadiq Bey, Isaiah Stewart, Kuminga, and Isaiah Stewart. That's six. That's 6 players. Young players that have a lot of talent and potential to be great. My only really concern is that who's going to hold them accountable. And you don't want to be in like an Orlando Magic situation where you have like the Magic have a bunch of talented players: Cole Anthony, Markelle Fultz, RJ Hampton, who else? Jonathan Isaac. They have all these young players, but you wonder if you get too many young players, like is their development? How is that going to affect this? We saw this with like the process 76ers, bunch of young players just playing on the court, but without veteran leadership and the culture that was established throughout this year. I get kind of worried about like where does that hinder their development? But value wise, it's a great trade for sure.
Yeah, I mean, like Jeremy Grant, initially when we signed him, I think it was like 3 years, like 60 some odd $1 million. Like we were signing him for like, anywhere between, I forgot, I don't know the number exactly, but it was like anywhere between like 18 and 20 some odd million. Um, and people were like questioning it, but obviously Troy Weaver knew him through Oklahoma City. Uh, in the bubble, he guarded Kawhi like the whole playoffs, and or like the whole playoff series that the Nuggets played, and they ended up winning, coming back from 3-1 3-1 deficit. Um, but yeah, he really burst on the scene, and I do think he likes the coaching staff here, and he likes the foundation that, and the picture that Troy Weaver sees in his head, and like you know I think he likes the future here and the potential that the Pistons can be good. But at the same time, let's be real. Like if Jeremy Grant's your second best player on a team, your team's probably not great, especially if he's your best player. Um, I think he would be a solid like number three guy, or like he would be a great like number four option. But I don't think they're gonna be making any big splashes in free agency to go sign um like a Chris Paul or like a Mike Conley, especially with Cade Cunningham probably going to us. Yeah, this free agent class is not like that great outside of Kawhi. Um, so I don't know. I think trading him would be a solid option and something that you should seriously look at, especially if you want to probably have a shot to make the playoffs like the next 3-4 years. Um, and like you said, Troy Weaver has guys that he already wants in his head. So if, Book Knight or Kaminga is one of those guys, he could make a trade at, 7 for it. Um, but yeah. Um, so yeah, we talked about that. Who do you think would be like a solid guy to trade up for them? Like just anywhere, like lottery, not in the lottery, but like let's say they trade up for the first round. Where do you think in the first round uh they should trade? And who do you think they should take, or like who's a player you like um out of the out of this draft class that you think the Pistons should take?
Yeah, no, I think for this, for like the first round picks, and I think for this draft in general, they should just be taking flyers. They're not really in a position to draft for fit because honestly, how Troy Weaver assembled the team last year, it was kind of just let's get these players and let's just put them on the floor and let them figure it out. So that's why there were some growing pains. I think that's going to be relevant with this draft class. So I think high upside players are definitely something they're looking at. So I mentioned the last draft video, Zaire Williams. If he's falling on the boards, I definitely think that's something that the Pistons should, and I think they will consider. Someone else that's kind of interesting is Day'Ron Sharp from UNC. We have Isaiah Stewart and we do have Plumlee, which kind of makes me think, okay, maybe this is not a good pick. But apparently Sharp's been like he's been shooting the lights out in his workouts, which wasn't a thing when he was at UNC, and he can pass the ball a little bit. So I definitely think he's definitely an intriguing piece. But yeah, I think honestly these high upside guys are just what you go for. I can also on this is like on the complete other end, I can see them also making a trade for a Sadiq Bey type player, the player that like I think is rising up. And now I think I wouldn't be surprised if he goes 14. Golden State is Trey Murphy, out of Virginia, solid 3-and-D player. If you look at his shooting splits, I believe he had a 50-40-90 season, which is like That's when you know you're doing something right with your shooting, and he can play defense. He's good laterally, so he can move pretty well. So I definitely think that's something they consider. There are also some other players, maybe like Miles McBride out of West Virginia. He's a player who the analytics love. A lot of analytics like them. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I think there's a lot of high upside guys I think you should take chances on. Maybe JT Thor out of Auburn if you believe him. But we're in this position. We're not a good team. We shouldn't be drafting for fit. These high upside guys are what we need. And yeah, I think it'll be for one of those players because they are rising. Williams is rising. Trey Murphy on the opposite end is rising. So yeah, there's definitely options for sure.
Yeah, I mean, they really I think they really need a solid two guard to go with Cade and Killian. Obviously Cade, you're drafting Cade to be the primary ball handler. If you draft Cade to play the two or the three and not be the primary ball handler, he'll still be a good NBA player. But like the reason why he's going number one is for, being a primary ball handler. And with his vision and other attributes offensively. So I do think you need to go get like a two or a three guy. Um, I said this last podcast, but I like Keon Johnson out of Tennessee. There's another dude out of Tennessee, Jaden Springer,
Mhm.
who's another combo guard who his stock has been falling. I don't think he really tested that well, but he was pretty good when I watched Tennessee. I like Moses Moody, so I think if that Jerami Grant trade like happens, like I think I would like to see them take Moses Moody at 7, but yeah, like you said, they should just be taking the best player available and taking taking high upside guys, especially if they keep those second round picks, guys from the G League like Isaiah Todd, Dacian Nix, like
Mhm.
those guys were 5-star recruits out of high school. You should be taking those guys
Yeah.
rather than like a Luca Garza or something like that. But yeah. Uh so so along with the draft, we'll talk about Dwayne Casey. Uh, they extended him, which you know it has its ups and downs, pros and cons to that. But along with that, they hired a bunch of new assistants. They hired they hired a dude from the Celtics. I forgot his name. I don't remember the names of these dudes, but they hired a dude from the Trailblazers, I think, a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
They also hired John Beeline as a player development, like assistant to Troy Weaver. And yeah, John Beeline had his yeah, he had his day of reckoning in Cleveland and was not really had anything good to talk about in Cleveland. But at U of M, as an MSU fan, I will say he was really good. He was a really good talent evaluator. Made 2 Final Fours, and he didn't really get like the top recruits. He didn't really get the best recruits there. He got like threes and like mid to low 4-star guys and turned them into pros. So I mean, I think he has a really good eye for talent. Um, what do you make of these stats?
Yeah, no, I think John Beeline is a really interesting get for the Pistons. I think he's definitely needed. From what I've seen so far, he's like working on his shooting with like players like Saban Lee. Saban Lee is a player who's like very athletic, but just can't shoot. He has like a lot of other intangibles. His IQ is pretty good. He can control the game, but he can't shoot. So I definitely think for Beeline, that's a great thing for Lee to work with Beeline because Beeline has a history of helping people shoot. But just in general, with Dwayne Casey getting his extension, in the beginning of the year, I think along with a lot of Pistons fans, were very frustrated with Dwayne Casey. mainly because of like Sekou Doumbouya not getting minutes and young guys not getting minutes. I remember one game specifically. It was literally just like the second game of the season. It was against the Cavaliers. It went into double overtime, and I just remember just being so frustrated that it was like Derrick Rose and Blake Griffin, Jeremy Grant, Mason Plumlee, DeLon Wright. They were just all on the floor. We're just like, where's Killian Hayes? Where's Sadiq Bey? So that was kind of frustrating. But honestly, as the season went on, and I realized I'm not an NBA coach for a reason, and I think a lot of fans realize they're not coaches for a reason. Corey Casey, I gave him credit. He did a really good job developing, and I think it is a smart way to bring players, in general, just to bring them on slowly, bring them off the bench, and then let them, play their way into the starting lineup. Honestly, you could maybe debate that's what they should have done with Killian Hayes, but I think as far as like development goes, he's probably the best because it's not worth it to make a change for the sake of making a change. And Dwayne Casey did a really good job in Toronto developing young players. I mean, the list like OG Anunoby, Pascal Siakam, Fred VanVleet. Sure, they're not in their like strides when Dwayne Casey was there, but he's part of he coached the bench mob or whatever they used to call it. And even Kyle Lowry and DeRozan developed under Casey. So my thinking is they're gonna go with Dwayne Casey. They're gonna take him until maybe they're about ready to make the playoffs, or maybe they've like made the playoffs a couple times and they've like gone out in the first or second round, and then maybe they look to upgrade. Because I do think in the playoffs, Dwayne Casey, that's when his flaws come out. But as far as developing talent, I think honestly Casey is as good as it gets. And yeah, I've definitely gained more faith this season in Dwayne Casey than I had in years past. I don't know. How do you feel about Casey's coaching this season?
Um, I mean, I thought it was all right. He did what he could. Um, yeah, but I mean, yeah, absolutely logical to make a change at this point in time. So, yeah, so why would you? Um, do you think some of the assistants, uh, I've heard good things. I just don't remember the names of the dudes. But the one dude that came from the Celtics, like Brad Stevens, really thought highly of him. Um, the dude that they just got from the Blazers has been around the league for a pretty long time. So I think they got some decent coaches that have a lot of experience and they've heard a lot of good things about them. And I think that just goes into the player development because I think Dwayne Casey, when he was in Toronto, like in his prime at Toronto, he wasn't really worried about player development as much as like he had like stars already with Lowry and DeRozan. Um, I mean, people will say like, yeah, Nick Nurse was like, you know, the mastermind behind everything, but Casey was still a head coach, so like he still made a lot of these like decisions ultimately. But I do think he had a decent amount of help in Toronto, but I also think he's been good, especially with like Sadiq Bey, where he's definitely surprised a lot of people. Obviously, being a first team All Rookie, and I think Isaiah Stewart too definitely surprised a lot of people. I think the roles that he played them in last year, especially down towards the end of the season, even though they were tanking, were the roles that they like went into gradually. He didn't just throw them into the fire like the first game of the season. Be like, okay, here you go out here, play 25 minutes against like some all-star. Like he gradually put them in, and by the end of the season they were getting like 20-25 minutes a game, and they were getting like meaningful run. They weren't getting like garbage time and stuff, and they were playing well and they were playing productive. All right, so now we're gonna switch it over a little bit to just the general NBA. So there's been a lot of trade rumors obviously coming up. uh the Sixers, the Trailblazers, want to move, or the Sixers have been looking to move Ben Simmons. Obviously, reports have been saying that Dame wants out of Portland. So what do you make of these? Like what are some big trades that you see or like potentially see in the near future? Maybe even on trade or no, maybe even on draft night.
For the Sixers, let's be real. I think Ben Simmons, as good as he may be in the other facets of his game, the you can't ignore just like the inability to shoot, or just like the lack of confidence. I don't even think people are like frustrated with the fact that he's not a good shooter. They're just frustrated with he just doesn't lack. He lacks all confidence with a shot. A lot of people point to that and point in Game 7, where he had an open dunk and then he passed it to Thibault, and I believe Thibault like either like missed the ensuing free throws or went made one, missed one. But that was just like kind of sums up Ben Simmons. And I do think in his time in the Sixers honestly should be coming to an end. I find it really hard that they run it back. So then as far as like what they could get, I think the Sixers may need to understand, or they're gonna realize this soon, that they don't have leverage like in a trade for Ben Simmons. And I don't know. I worry if they'll get sufficient value for what they're trying to do. Because from the Sixers perspective, they have Joel Embiid, and he's basically entering his prime. I think he's like 28, 20. I want to say he's like 28 years old or in that range. And at this point, they're in the win now mode, which is honestly one of the more dangerous. It's not in a necessarily a good state to be in, because you want to win these trades. You want to get all-star players. And I just wonder what all-star player would teams be willing to give up? Like, would the Raptors be willing to give up like Pascal Siakam for Ben Simmons? Like, I don't know if like teams are really like that interested in Simmons. I think if the Sixers were thinking about rebuilding and starting a rebuild completely, they could get a haul. I definitely think like teams like the Kings or the Cavs have a lot to offer. Like for the Kings, you're looking at like 3 or 4 first round picks. Marvin Bagley, who although has been disappointing, is still number 2 pick. Like you can get definitely a lot of value, but I wonder how they're gonna get, because they want an all-star. I wonder like who that could be. We know CJ McCollum is a name that's thrown around, but I don't think it really makes either team like as good. And I don't know if Portland's even interested in it. We'll get into Portland a little bit, but for Ben Simmons, what would you do if you were the Sixers?
Yeah, I mean, like, I think a team that will take him is a team that sees a fit or sees something in him. I like to look at Milwaukee as a team who had like, I'm not saying Ben Simmons is Giannis, but like the position that Ben Simmons and Giannis play as like the air quotes here, like dunker spot, like dunker position is kind of like the position I would like to play Ben Simmons in rather than like, a, a more formal point guard position. Because obviously he is a unicorn, being like a 6'10" ball handler, and he's a solid defender. But yeah, like you said, he was kind of scared. He was scared to shoot and was just a non-factor in in the Hawks series. But I mean, a team like Portland, I don't know. Um, I think McCollum is probably going to be a no from the Sixers end just because of his age. I think he's like 32 now, something like that. Like he I think he's going to be too old for the Sixers to take him. Um Especially with like a large contract that he has. Uh but I don't know. It's kind of hard. Um I mean, shit, I'm trying to think of teams that would like take him, but yeah, like finding a fit. Um, I mean, I think this weirdly enough, I'm gonna say the Spurs because the Spurs are just looking for an identity at this point,
Yeah,
and
maybe.
like they don't know what really like where they're going, and I think if they take a flyer on Simmons, um, and he turns out to be bad, they'll have a lottery pick and they'll be picking in top 5, and I trust them to make a you know the right pick for a top 5 pick, or if he's good, then they're back competing. um obviously, if he goes to a Western Conference team, that'd be tough. And I think Embiid personally is like I think Embiid is fed up with like the little amount of help he's getting. So I think he's gonna want a lot, or else he's gonna want out of Philly as well. But I don't know. It's really tough to say now, but I think he just definitely needs the right coaching. Like you can't like you were talking about like uh players like prospects, like going to Orlando would suck for like prospects in terms of like player development. I think
Yeah.
that's the same thing with him. Like if he goes to Toronto, plays with like Nick Nurse, or he goes to, you know, Spurs, plays with Popovich, or even Golden State. Like I think he'll fit well there. But if he goes to a team like Orlando, team like Chicago, or New York, even the Knicks, like Tom Thibodeau's not that good of a coach. Like that,
Mhm.
he would struggle um getting back to being like where people thought he would be. But yeah, like going off of Portland, obviously Dame, sources have been saying Dame has requested a trade. Um, Dame is one of my favorite players personally, probably one of my two or three favorite players in the league right now. Until Cade Cunningham comes, obviously he'll be my favorite player then. But I mean, Philly people have been hearing that he would go to Philly, and I fucking hate Philly. I don't want him to go there. But but I mean, where do you see him fitting in? Because obviously he has a large contract as well, and he really wanted to put on for Portland, but they just didn't give him any help. McCollum really, I mean, he's a 6'2" shooting guard, so like, and in the Western Conference, it was just really hard for him to flourish in the playoffs. So, what do you think they do with Dame? And obviously, if they trade him, that's gonna be the start of a rebuild for Portland. But yeah, what do you think they do there?
Yeah, no, I think so I know like he's denied or Lillard rather, he's denied like reports of him requesting a trade, and he said if it's not coming from me, then I didn't do it. But I mean, I think honestly, like it's just gonna happen. It's kind of a matter of time. Like Portland's kind of, I wouldn't say Portland's hanging on for dear life, but like I feel like they know it's happening. And that's on their GM Neil O'Shea for not really making trades, or not really, I guess, because I think he believes that this team is better, and I think he wants to run it back with the same team with Chauncey Billups as the head coach. Which, honestly, let's be real, that's like a first round exit, maybe second round they reach it. I don't think they're not a title contender. So as far as like where Dame could go, there's a lot of places that I think could use him. I feel like Damian Lillard may be more, now he's played in Portland for such a long time. I get the sense that he probably wants to play in a bigger market. It's only natural. A lot of players like to do that. They want to play for the Lakers, Knicks, all those teams. I think the Warriors are kind of intriguing. Now, obviously, the fit between Damian Lillard, Curry, and Klay Thompson, Draymond Green is kind of weird. And I don't know. I don't know, like if one would come off the bench, or maybe they would, or not. They would maybe probably run like a three lineup where it's like Curry at the one, Damian two, Klay Thompson at the three. I guess they do something like that. But they do have the assets, I guess, to get it done. Wiseman 7 and 14. We were just talking about Jerami Grant, but James Wiseman 7 and 14 is like somewhere, and then maybe you throw in Andrew Wiggins, and then you throw in a couple more first round picks. Maybe that gets Golden State, no, that gets Portland a bite, or maybe a team like the Knicks. Maybe if the Portland Trailblazers could get back like RJ Barrett or Emmanuel Quickly, Obi Toppin, some more first, like all the first in the world. If I'm Portland, I'm demanding as many first, because this is not like a player that like he's going to be like a Kawhi Leonard in Toronto situation where he's here for a year and then he'll evaluate his options and just leave. Damian Lillard is under a contract, so when you're trading for him, you're going to get him for at least 2 to 3. I'm not sure how many years left, but at least 2 years you're going to get Damian Lillard. So it's whoever is kind of willing to give up the first. I will admit, like the Philly fit would be like would be good. I don't like Philly either. Joel Embiid used to clown Andre Drummond when now I don't really like Andre Drummond that much, but that's just how it is being a Pistons fan. He wasn't on the good side, but I guess that fit would be good. But then again, like what can Philly offer Portland to the I like Tyrese Maxey. He's an interesting piece, but does he get the job done? Like does Simmons, Maxey, and like some more first round picks, Thibault, I guess, and first round. I think Portland can get a bigger haul, and they may honestly want to trade him to a place that has young talent, like a team like the I know like this is a terrible. I don't think they would ever do it, but a team like Orlando or something, like they get him, like they can get a haul in terms of like young talent and picks, and like it may not be necessarily in their best interest to trade him to like a big market team because like if you trade him to Lakers, you're just gonna get like Kuzma, maybe KCP, a couple
Yeah.
maybe second round picks, Taylor Horton Tucker. Like you're not gonna get much value. So yeah, if I'm Portland, I mean it's a tricky situation. You want to do Damian like Lillard, or do you want to do Dame like the right way, get him into a place he's happy? But yeah, I think like it's only like the Warriors that can, I guess, offer value per se. So yeah, it's definitely a tricky
Yeah.
situation for sure.
Lillard has talked about before about being from Oakland, and I know the Warriors are in San Francisco now, but like I remember, he was from Oakland. He really like saw how the Warriors put on for like the city that he's from, and he was like kind of he. I mean, I feel like he was a little bit jealous and like also at the same time kind of sad like that he couldn't be a part of that. But yeah, I mean, shit. I haven't even thought of like OKC has Kemba Walker. Like they definitely would dump him, and he is a true tanking point guard because he was not good for Boston. So like they would be in full tank mode, and their both of their contracts are large enough that like it would pretty much balance out if they got like one of OKC's like other first round picks, probably not six, but maybe six, who knows?
Mhm.
Um, Along with Kemba and like some other, assets. And then you have Dame and SGA. So like
Yeah.
then that's kind of a solid squad. Um,
Would you
but
consider
yeah,
like wait here after would you consider Damian to Toronto? Like if Toronto traded for and maybe like OG and an OB, maybe Pascal Siakam, honestly, would you consider that maybe?
yeah, I would no, I would definitely like to see him in Toronto. I don't think they give up Siakam just because
Hmm.
like yeah, but I mean, maybe it's hard to tell because Toronto had like they had a bad season. They underachieved like pretty badly this year. Um, Obviously they had like injuries and stuff. Uh, but yeah, I mean, I don't think see them trading Siakam, but I could see them trading like Van Vliet, um, someone like that, along with Anunoby. But yeah, but I want to talk about this before we wrap it up. But there was a rumor or like a trade like a mock trade proposal or something that Boston is interested in Bradley Beal,
Hmm.
and there was an offer for Jalen Brown for Bradley Beal. I don't know if it was straight up, but it was it was something like that where would you give up Jalen Brown for Bradley Beal? Obviously, Brown like was an All Star this year, and he's been uh, become a lot better in Boston year by year. But I mean, would you give him up for Bradley Beal? I mean, Bradley Beal is like the leading scorer in the league, but I don't know. What do you think?
So like I think for like from the Wizards perspective, I think yes, I would give up Bradley Beal for Jalen. So the idea, I guess, is that I think Jalen Brown's a little bit younger than Bradley Beal. I don't know his exact age, but I know Bradley Beal is definitely 30. If he was in the 2012 draft, he's definitely probably pushing 30. And I think Jalen
Yeah,
Brown is like 16. So there's definitely a difference there. I don't know how much that makes the Celtics better, I guess. So Jason Tatum and Bradley Beal are, I think they're friends from like Missouri and stuff. So maybe they have like some dynamic there. But like you wonder like on the defensive end, like how does that work? Because Jaylen Brown, like one of those values he provides is his defense. So that's kind of interesting. I don't know. I think Washington could maybe get more value in terms of their because if I'm Washington and I'm like being like honest with their future and their like direction, it's just like where are we going? So if they do trade for Jaylen Brown, for example, like first of all, they're like wasting Jaylen Brown's career because it's not like the Wizards are gonna win a title. They don't have like a team. And then I don't know, like it just seems like the Wizards are kind of in this, like, I don't want to say mediocre, but this purgatory of just chasing the 8 seed. So, in my perspective, they should blow it up and just get as many picks as they can for Westbrook and Bradley Beal, and then develop like Rui Hachimura and then Denny and all those guys, and Thomas Bryant maybe. But if I'm Boston, like, and I would consider it. I think what they should do is they should run back Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum for one. I know Jaylen Brown got injured this past year, and I think they should maybe run it back until like the trade deadline, and then if it's not working, and then work out trade for Bradley Beal. But yeah, no. What was your first reaction when you first saw that?
I at first I was like, yeah, you should totally do this. Like Bradley Beal along with Tatum would be like, you know, that's a big duo. But on second glance, you look at the rest of Boston's roster besides Jaylen Brown and Tatum, and it blows. It sucks. Like they're playing like uh what's his name, like Ronald Will or whatever, somebody Williams the third. I forgot his name, and like Marcus Smart is not what he was. I mean, they just took a bunch of flyers because they got a ton of picks out of that KG Paul Pierce trade from Brooklyn, and they kind of just like obviously they got Tatum and Jaylen Brown out of it, but they also pissed a lot away. Like they just took some random ass dudes with all those picks, and when they could have just taken like best player available, like Romeo Langford, like he's a
Yeah,
nobody now.
Borch.
And like they just kind of messed around, and I think Danny Ainge he's just not a good GM in terms of that, and I think that's why uh they hired Brad Stevens to be the GM, is because I think he's a lot better talent evaluator. I don't know what he'll do, but I think if they get traded Jaylen Brown for Bradley Beal, they'd be giving up more than just Jaylen Brown, and they don't really have that much already. So
Yeah.
yeah, like
One last,
yeah,
one last note on like the Celtics, just like with Danny Ainge, like he made like the trade of the century. I think that trade is as one-sided as it gets. And if
oh
you look
yeah,
at the players, it got them Jason Tatum, I think Colin Sexton, it got them the Jaylen Brown. Like it got them some really nice players, but like I don't think you can forgive Ainge for not trading those for a star. I know Anthony Davis was an option, but they didn't want to give up Jaylen Brown. Paul George was an option, but they didn't want to give up another pick. Like that, like mismanagement of picks, and they had a window, and they still do have a window. But like you said, like now it's just like they're in an awkward state. And Brad Stevens, like you said, it's interesting. He's never been a GM. He's never been GM, so it's an interesting thing. But man, they had the opportunity to win the title. Like they could have made this a big trade, and AD may have been a Celtic. I know his dad now hates the Celtics, but AD could have actually been on the Celtics, and here we are now. I don't know. Like I guess they have to build around Tatum and Brown or Tatum and Beal. But it's gonna be kind of tough. I feel like they're really lacking
yeah.
a star.
I do also want to point out and go off that and say that Brooklyn is probably closer to a championship now
Yeah,
than
exactly.
Boston has ever been, even
Mhm.
after that trade. Like that was Brooklyn got fleeced so badly, and now at this point, like they're closer to a championship. Like they might win a championship next year, and Boston won't win one. And they recovered from that shitty of a trade like that that quickly. But yeah, um, so any final remarks? Anything else to add add on before we head out?
No, I'm just really excited. Thursday's the big day. Hopefully, the Pistons, end up with Cade, and hopefully we see some trades. I'm excited to talk about it future. And yeah, no, the off season's here. College football is restarting up, so we're on that. But yeah, it's a good time for a brief period before sports goes dead for a little bit. But yeah, it's exciting. This is an exciting time of the year for sure.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Yeah, so I guess we'll see all you guys after draft night, and we'll go over what the Pistons did and some things that stuck out and what teams won draft night and what teams didn't. All right. Well, thanks for listening.
Hey, peace.